Istanbul, 1964. A team of thieves is planning the impossible. The Topkapi Palace Museum, fortress-like, centuries of Ottoman treasures behind those walls. So the plan is this. You go in from above, through a rooftop window. A strong man holds a rope. An acrobat dangles hanging from it, suspended, moving without touching, reaching for that dagger. It is the most nerve-wracking sequence in cinema that year. 32 years later, Langley, Virginia, the CIA, a man descends from the ceiling on a cable inches above a pressure-sensitive floor, reaching for a computer terminal. Now you know the scene. Everyone knows the scene. Tom Cruise, suspended, still, sweating. The same geometry, the same silence, the same unbearable, almost mathematical tension. One film inspired the other. The man who made the Langley scene said so himself. He cited the Istanbul film by name. But here is the detail that no one quite puts together. In Istanbul, they're stealing a dagger. In Langley, a knife is accidentally dropped during the heist, left behind on that pressure-sensitive floor. 29 years later, in the final film of the franchise, that dropped knife comes back. It becomes the most meaningful object in the entire series. This is a story about what happens when a director in exile makes a film that changes everything twice. Welcome. I'm Arvind Vijay Mohan, and today's story is one about a chain. It's neither a conspiracy nor a secret, just the way ideas move from one person to another across decades and countries and genres, until what began as a heist film set in a Turkish palace becomes the most lucrative spy franchise in Hollywood history, and then falls back onto itself in the most satisfying way imaginable. The story has three men at its center: a director America tried to silence, a television writer who saw what that director had made, and a producer actor who turned a TV show into a global phenomenon. None of them fully knew what they were building. Let's begin. Jules Dassin was born in Middletown, Connecticut in 1911. He was the son of Russian Jewish immigrants. He grew up in Harlem, taught himself theatre, moved to Hollywood in the 1940s and became one of the most exciting directors in American cinema. His films, Brute Force, The Naked City, Thieves' Highways, Night in the City, were sharp and dark and very real. He was one of the leading American filmmakers of the post-war era. And then the McCarthy era arrived. Dassin was subpoenaed by the HUAC in 1952, and they blacklisted him after he refused to testify before this committee, the House Un-American Activities Committee. He was ousted by them from the United States, and he left for France in 1953, where he struggled for his first few years while based in Paris. You see, he was not fluent in French, and he had no connections there. American pressure meant that even European studios were wary of hiring him, because any film that he made would struggle to get US distribution. He got a job finally because a producer who had bought the rights to a crime novel had realized that it was unfilmable and told Dassin that if he could make this film, and more importantly make the bad guys French, he'd have a project on his hands. Dassin wrote the script in 10 days flat. The film was Rififi, released in 1955. It won Dassin the Best Director Award at the 1955 Cannes Film Festival. And it changed the history of cinema forever. Rififi is the prototype of all crime films where a group of charismatic criminals are followed through a complicated, detailed robbery. The Clooney Pitt version of Ocean's 11 is Rififi, only in finer suits perhaps. Mission Impossible, on large and small screens, would not exist without Rififi. But it's the second film that matters most to our story. 10 years after Rififi, Dassin returns to the heist genre. This time bigger, more colorful, more playful. He makes a film called Topkapi that is filmed in France and in Istanbul in Turkey. It stars his real-life wife Melina Mercouri, Maximilian Schell and Peter Ustinov. The plot? A beautiful thief named Elizabeth Lipp and a criminal genius, Walter Harper, put together a plan to steal an emerald-encrusted dagger from Istanbul's Topkapi Palace. Their team includes an alarms expert, a strongman, and a circus acrobat known as Giulio, the human fly. Now, since the museum's floor is completely pressure-alarmed, a plan is hatched. It will be necessary to lower Giulio by rope from a rooftop window. But there's also the need to raise the heavy glass cover that encloses the mannequin on which the dagger is displayed. The last 40 minutes of the film, when Julio is lowered through the chamber from the rooftop through a skylight window, tethered to a rope, doing acrobatics, suspended in midair to avoid touching the alarm floor, when the heist actually is taking place, is breathtaking. The film is a super hit. Peter Ustinov wins the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. And in a cinema in Hollywood, a young television writer is watching this and cannot stop thinking about it. Bruce Geller, born in New York City in 1930, a Yale graduate. He's been writing for television, Have Gun Will Travel, The Rifleman, Rawhide, and he's very good at it. But his sights are set on something bigger, something cinematic. Inspired in particular by the French heist film Rififi, Geller envisioned something. On his agent's recommendation, he shaped a script, first titled Brig Squad, as a pilot for a TV series and took it to Desilu Studios that was desperately seeking a new hit. A key inspiration for Geller in creating this series was the 1964 Jules Dassin film Topkapi, innovative for its coolly existential depiction of an elaborate heist. Geller switched the story away from the criminals of Topkapi to the good guys, but kept Dassin's style of minimal dialogue, prominent music scoring, and clockwork precision plots that were executed by a team of diverse specialists. This is the key creative move, the invention. What if the team lowering themselves through that skylight are not thieves, but agents? What if the pressure alarm floors and the clockwork timing and the team of impossibly skilled specialists were working for the right side? What if the impossible mission was righteous? In early drafts, the team members were semi-reformed criminals, a compulsive gambler, a drug addict, a thief, a former strip club bouncer. Geller cleaned them all up and made their backgrounds clean to make the show more appealing. The show finds a home at Desilu Studios, the production company that's run by Lucille Ball. It goes to CBS. The series aired on CBS from September 1966 to March 1973. Geller picked up 2 Emmys for his efforts, both in 1967, for writing and for Outstanding Drama Series. The show runs for 7 seasons. It becomes one of the most distinctive programs in the history of American television. The self-destructing tape, the team of specialists, the clockwork operations, the minimal dialogue, the maximum tension. All of that flowing from that sequence in Istanbul. A man dangling above a pressure-sensitive floor, reaching for a dagger. There is something else you should know about Bruce Geller. 5 years after the show's cancellation, in 1978, Geller was killed when his private plane crashed into a mountain near Santa Barbara, California. He was 47. He never saw what happened next. He never saw his television show become a film franchise. He never saw Tom Cruise lower himself into that CIA vault. He never saw what that knife would come to mean. He was 47. The hand that lit the fuse in the opening credits of Mission Impossible, that was literally Geller's hand until the 6th season. His hand, his match. 30 years after the television show premieres, a film arrives. Mission Impossible is a 1996 American spy thriller directed by Brian De Palma, produced by and starring Tom Cruise. A reboot of the 1966 television series, it is the first installment in the Mission Impossible film series. It opens on May 22, 1996 in a then record 3,012 theaters. It grosses $457 million worldwide. The centerpiece of the film is the heist at the CIA headquarters in Langley. Ethan Hunt descends from the ceiling on a cable. Below him, a pressure-sensitive floor. He cannot touch it, so he must stay suspended. He must retrieve the knock list from a computer terminal, a list of every undercover agent in Europe. And then a drop of sweat falls from his face towards the floor, and a rat emerges from the ventilation shaft. And an analyst named William Donlow arrives earlier than expected, and a knife belonging to one of Ethan's team, the traitor Krieger, falls from a pocket and lands on the floor. It nearly destroys the entire operation. Ethan retrieves the knock list, the mission continues. But the knife is left behind in the vault when they escape. Film historians and critics have noted that De Palma pays direct homage to Topkapi sequence with this scene. And they're right. The geometry is the same. The dagger in Istanbul, the knife in Langley. A man suspended, a floor that cannot be touched. 32 years apart, 2 different films, one idea. The film's success leads to a long-running franchise, 7 sequels over nearly 30 years. And now we come to the part that I find most extraordinary about the story, the re-emergence of William Donlow. who was shipped away from Langley as a result of Ethan's knockless heist in the first film, allows Ethan to see that he did not inadvertently destroy this man's life, but he actually gave him the ability to find love and a new purpose. That knife, the one that started it all, that Ethan left behind during this heist, returns not as an action prop, but as a symbol. Donlow gives Ethan the knife as a symbol of forgiveness. Think about the arc of this object. A dagger in a Turkish palace in a 1964 film inspires a TV show, which inspires a film franchise. And that knife is, 29 years later, in the final film, returned to the very man who dropped it. Full circle. Not a coincidence, a design, built slowly across 60 years by people who mostly never met each other. I've been thinking about how every creative act casts a longer shadow than the person making it will ever realize. Dassin, for instance, didn't know that he was planting a seed in the mind of a television writer in Los Angeles. Geller didn't know that he was building a franchise that would run for 6 decades. De Palma did not know that the knife his villain dropped in Langley in 1996 would become the most emotionally resonant object in the final chapter of a story that would still be playing in cinemas in 2025, nearly 30 years after the premiere of the first film in the franchise. They were each just doing the next thing, making the best thing that they could. But the ideas moved. From Istanbul to Hollywood, from a dagger to a knife, from a blacklisted director's act of survival to one of the most longest running franchises in cinema history. Isn't that impossibly beautiful? The chain of how things connect. The thing that connects Jules Dassin, alone in Paris in 1953 with not enough money and not enough French, to a knife being returned to Tom Cruise on screen in 2025. A single unbroken thread made of nothing but imagination and time. These are real people, these are real stories, and all of this really happened. My name is Arvind Vijay Mohan, and I'll see you on the next mind-blowing episode.